Okay, so we're back delving a bit deeper into the front end of the car. Now, I said that there was oil leaks from the rocker covers pretty much on both sides, but it's hard to see fully where things are at. So I decided to take off a little bit more, and we've ended up taking off the headers. Now, these are OEM, probably never been off the car. Got the gaskets there and the bolts. They didn't come off too bad, a little bit filly. Now, I don't think the heat shields are going to go back on. They're just too crusted. We broke a few bolts, not many. I just don't really think it's worth them going back onto the car. So we're going to split this, change this gasket, obviously change these gaskets. We've got the rest of the OEM heat shields over here. You see, still got these the foam inlays that were in them. But they did come apart actually, bar two of the bolts. They weren't as bad as I thought. Now, looking under here, you've obviously got much more room to look at what's going on. So you can see the oil drip at the back there. So that's definitely coming along that line for that rocker gasket on the passenger side. There's a bit of oil and stuff down here. I'm wondering if, try and keep a little bit low, I'm wondering if it just kind of blows out the exhaust there, I don't know. This is not like really wet oil, it's more just like dirt and gunk. So that side, under there, not so bad. Bit gunky up around here. Done a bit of research and found out that the oil dripping off the filter normally is the seal for the oil cooler modine. So if you take the filter off, you've got a bolt that holds basically the water cooler for the oil to the block. Take the bolt out, drop that, and there's a seal around the top. Now, while that's there, you can see my water pipe here is a bit corroded, and for 30 quid you get, I think it's around 30 quid, you get a new pipe and the 3 new tiny little 90 bend hoses, and this one's got a heat shield on it. So I'm going to buy the new seal for here, which is 6 quid. Obviously I'm doing an oil and filter change anyway, so that's fine, and we'll spend the 30 quid and we'll change them hoses. Now, you kind of get to the point when you think where you're going to stop with all this sort of stuff, but whilst you're here, you may as well do it. Now, if that's coming off, I will do the coolant flush at the same time, and if I'm doing the coolant flush, I'll probably do, I'd say, the can belt at the same time as well, thermostat, water hoses. Like, this is one good thing that no one has ever played with a car, is it's not been pulled apart. Bad thing about no one's ever played with a car is none of this stuff, by the look of it, has ever been done. Now, on this side, you can see the oil leak, and the gunk is much worse. And it's all around here, again, from that rocker gasket. And it's been there for a long time. It's like congealed, and it's pretty grimy. So, both rocker cover gaskets, and now we can probably get to the lower bolts easier. So that's what's going on underneath. I found a CV, that's the steering gaiter, but on the driver's, apologies there, I accidentally turned the camera off. The inner CV boot on the drive shaft on the driver's side is split, so that needs to be changed. I think that might have been an advisory on one of the MOTs previously that it looked like it split, but it has split, so the CV boot needs to be changed. So we've got a list of all little things, you know, nothing drastic. The hardest bit is probably the rocker cover seals, because I've never done something like that. It's a bit more finicky to get in there. I've got new spark plugs, so we'll do them while we're in there. Like I say, we'll probably get rid of this heat shield that's on there, and I'll leave that off. And then maybe in the future we'll change them for some aftermarket ones. Might be able to pick some up second hand and swap them out for something better. But yeah, for the moment, that is where we're at on the top end. Just to make things a little bit easier to get to on this side, I've already taken out the airbox, and you can see down here you've got your 2 coil packs and your bolts for the rockers around here, and from the top the lower ones will be quite difficult to get to, so it may be easier to have the car up in the air like we have and get a couple of them from the bottom. So that's what we're going to do. So I think the next step now is we'll drain the oil, and then we can start pulling the rocker covers off. And I might pull both sides and then like throw a blanket over them so we can have both sides cleaned and sorted, ready to go, sort of do it. Rather than doing one side then the other, I might pull them both off. I'm not too sure yet. And then obviously, once that's done, I'll then drop the oil modine off, which means dropping the coolant. And I kind of, if I was dropping the coolant, I wanted to take the radiator out to give myself access to the cam belt. So one job pretty much leads into another, but we definitely wanted to do cam belt, coolant flush, oil and filter change, air filter, spark plugs and rocker cover gaskets. So we've got all those jobs there, and now we do the lower water hoses, and this top hose doesn't seem so bad, but the bottom one, again, 20 quid probably for a new hose. Whether it's worth changing it, if you're doing a coolant flush, I might as well change it. It does seem a little bit never ending, but while you're there, it's one of those things. And then to do the CV boot on the drive shaft, that's going to be fun because we've got to get that rusty, crusty hub off and disassemble that lot, but we're going to worry about that after. We're going to do everything here first. So yeah, that's an update of where we're at, and I'll bring you back when we've got it stripped down a little bit. Okay, so we just got down to the nitty gritty, and we've pulled the rocker covers off of both sides. So I've decided to take the covers off both sides, like I mentioned earlier, and then I'll spend the time getting everything cleaned up, prepped, clean both the covers, and then when I come to reinstall it, I'm ready on both sides. So I'm just going to show you, I'm not going to show you removing them because they're already off, but just a little bit of what needs to be taken out of the way. So you can see the rocker cover down there, there's the gasket. There was no sealant on these other than on a couple of spots in the corners. You can see in there, but the gasket, whatever that is really brittle. It's gone hard like plastic. The little half moons that go in the corners have got a really brittle like sealant around them. That side obviously was leaking quite bad. I'm going to have to clean the oil off of the up pipe. And then in here, obviously air box removed, the inlet section there removed, the water hoses here from the radiator, just cable tie them out of the way so they're not flapping around in your way while you're trying to work. And then this side, pretty straightforward. So there's the cover off. You've got to take off this top pipe here, which once the cover's loose, there's not a lot of room to move it, but once the cover's off, that'll just pull off, so there's no dramas. And then I've cleaned all around the actual face of here, which I use like an alcohol. I'll just put it on a small bit of cloth, and I'll go around and make sure all the old oil and stuff is off. Now come Monday or Tuesday, whenever I come to put these back on, I'll have to do the bottom section again because I'm sure some oil's going to run down there over the next day or two. So I'll have to make sure I just give it a wipe along the bottom one, and we make sure we've got any sealant off, especially in the corners down here that you can't really see. I like to use just like a little extendable mirror, get in there and have a look. Now, on the passenger side, there's a bit more in the way. So take the battery out first thing, wash your bottle, still full of fluid, just tip it on its side so it's not leaking, so that can come out of the way. Then I take off the alternator cable, took that off. So you've got one connector down here, you've got the stud that you connect to, you've got a plug on here, and then you've got some clips here. Careful not to break them because they're probably quite old. And then I've just cable tied that out the way. We've got our two coil packs tucked up out the way. I actually wrote F and B for front and back, so I make sure I don't get them around the wrong way when I put it back together. Then these two body harness plugs, unplug them this end, and then here you've got a bracket which bolts to here, so I just undone the bolt and moved the whole bracket up. Same with the battery cables, just cable tied everything back up there out the way so you've got room. This hose here, you can't really do a lot with that because that's the aircon, you can't move it and it's not very flexible. So you just have to kind of work around that. And again, not too bad. So I've gone round here, quite hard to see, but I've cleaned up all the faces, make sure I've got round in all the corners. I haven't done this one was a lot more oily around the spark plug holes. So I'll have to give them a wipe, and the seals that go around the spark plug faces there, this side seemed to be much more brittle. For whatever reason, I don't know. The two little half moons in there had gone really brittle, and you can see the edges of them. Well, I don't know, it's probably cracked when I've pulled it off, but they were like, there's no flexibility left in them. They literally feel like solid ABS plastic. Whether it was weeping around there, I'm not too sure. And again, this is just like the little flexible mirror that I'll use. Probably difficult to show on camera down there, but I'll use that to look at the back of the little half moon cutout. That's what I did, to make sure you've got anything off of it and there's no sealant, etc. And then there's the cover. This side has your oil fill tube. It's got one bracket there, 2 bolts, and that little piece on the side is to cable round, secure around one of the harness sections. So that just unbolts, and you've got an O-ring there. Probably be okay reusing that. I don't know if I can get another one. There's your top, I don't know what that's like, for your breather section of the top of the cam cover. And again, all the gaskets and bolts. I've got new bolts, I've got new sealing washers. Obviously I need to clean all these up, and then we're ready to reinstall. So that's how I'm going to leave it for now. I'm going to go get a couple of towels and put them just over the top of that. Obviously nothing's going on in the workshop over the weekend, so it's not going to get any dirt or ingress of anything else in there. But yeah, that is it. We are good to go. You wouldn't, if you were doing this yourself, you wouldn't need to remove your exhaust headers, but because I want to change that oil Modine seal, obviously I decided that it would be a good idea to remove them. And you know, it just gives you a little bit more room. When you're under here, I can get up into there. So if all these bolts were good and I didn't have a massive, like, it probably took me an hour or so to get the header covers off and the heat shield, sorry, to get them off and out of the way, and the fact that all these bolts hadn't been off in forever and were quite a bit of a battle to get them off. We got them off with no real dramas, but if the car was good and they'd been off recently, I'd be half tempted, for the sake of 8 bolts, 2 here and 3 on each exhaust header, I'd probably be quite inclined to just drop that out of the way. I'm just contemplating now whether to drop the sump and put a new gasket on the sump, because it seems like it's got a leak, typically right at the back. Now, when I've looked, it seems that if you're gonna do the sump gasket, or change the sump, or whatever you're doing, take off the under trailer gearbox, jack up on the, undo your 2 engine mount bolts, and jack up on the gearbox, only a small amount, because there's a real funny angle to get up here to the back, to allow you to get to the little, I don't know what they are, like M8 screws, M6 screws, or bolts that go up and hold the sump round. But I'm thinking this is going to come off to do the seal at the top, and then obviously I'm going to change these pipes and this corroded water pipe, and then shall I do that while I'm there? They do a revised sump pan that will fit this engine, that is meant to be better for your oil pickup, etc. You buy the sump, the dipstick tube, an internal baffle, and the dipstick itself, and it probably comes to about 120 quid. And everything I keep talking about is just money, 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 money. But do you do it while you're here, or do you do it another time? Because this has to come off, I believe, to sort of move out the way to be able to get this off. That's what I've read. Not too sure. So do I spend the 120 quid, another 120 quid, and change that at the same time? I don't know. But that's where we're at. Rockers are off. The gaskets didn't look too old, but they still got flex in them. They're not rock hard, but they are a little bit brittle. More so down here where it's by the exhaust. It started to crack a little bit, you know, not loads, but enough to cause a problem. So I'm hoping that once I've resealed and fitted new ones, new half moons, I use the proper sealant that Subaru use, can't remember the brand of it, but Free Bond I think it is. I'll use that, put the gaskets on while I'm there. The spark plugs are still in, but I'm going to change them. I just haven't taken them out yet because I'll do that beforehand. I've run out of time today. So yeah, that is getting the rocker cover gaskets off. That's how I've done it. There's a million videos about this, but you never know, you may want to watch this one. So yeah, that's where we're at. Gonna leave it there for today. Once again, cheers for watching. Please like and subscribe if you like the content, car content or the machine content, and we'll see you again soon.